Hi there. Hey, it's been a little while since I've read you a story. And this is one of my most favorite books. And you can tell because it's all tattered and worn and been read a million times. But this book is called The Rough-Faced Girl. And this is a Cinderella story. And it's a story that you will recognize that's close to Cinderella. But this rough-faced girl is an Indian Cinderella. In its original form, actually part of a longer and more complex traditional story, the rough-faced girl remains one of the most magical, mysterious, and beautiful of all Cinderellas. Grown on native soil, its mystery is rooted in our own place. I'm happy to pass it on to children and parents. This book is written by Rafe and it's illustrated by David Shannon. And he's illustrated a lot of children's books that you probably would recognize. So I'm going to get really close today, wearing my favorite t-shirt, but so you can see the picture. So I will read the words because the words are so good, and then I'll show you the pictures, okay? So, just like every fairy tale, this begins with once. Once, long ago, there was a village by the shores of Lake Ontario. And you can see that they lived in wigwams next to the lake. Off from the other wigwams of this village stood one great, huge wigwam. Painted on its sides were pictures of the sun, moon, stars, plants, trees, and animals. And inside this wigwam, there was said to live a very great, rich, powerful, and supposedly handsome, invisible being. However, no one could see him except his sister, who lived there too. Many women wanted to marry this invisible being, but his sister said, only the one who can see him can marry him. And if he's invisible, that would be kind of hard. Now, in this village, there lived a very poor man who had 3 daughters. The 2 older daughters were cruel, and they were hard-hearted. And they made their younger sister sit by the fire and feed the flames. It was her job to keep the fire going. When the burning branches popped, the sparks fell on her. In time, her hands became burnt and scarred. Her arms, too, became rough and scarred. Even her face was marked by the fire, and her beautiful long black hair hung ragged and charred. And those 2 older sisters laughed at her, saying, "Ha! You're ugly, you rough-faced girl." And they made her life very lonely and miserable indeed. They don't look very nice, do they? One day, these 2 older sisters went to their father and they said, "Father, give us some necklaces. Give us some new buckskin dresses. Give us some pretty beaded moccasins. We're going to marry the invisible being." So their father gave them these things. Dressed in their finest, the 2 girls marched through the village. All the people pointed and stared. "Look at those beautiful girls," they said. "They surely will marry the invisible being." And if those girls were proud and hard-hearted before, they were even prouder now. They walked haughtily. Haughtily means that they thought they were better than everyone else. through the village. At last they came to the wigwam of the invisible being, and there was his sister waiting. Does she look very happy? "Why have you come?" she said. We want to marry the invisible being," they said. "That's why we're here." If you want to marry my brother, you have to have seen him. Tell me, have you seen the invisible being?" "Of course we've seen him," they said. "Can't you see how pretty we are? Can't you see our beautiful clothes?" "Oh yes, anyone can tell that we truly have seen the invisible being." "All right," she said. "If you think you've seen him, then tell me, what was his bow made out of?" His bow?" they said. We know," but they turned desperately to one another and they whispered, "What shall we say?" "It's the great oak tree." "No," said the sister of the invisible being. Oh no, she could tell that they had lied. "Tell me," she said, "if you've seen my brother, the invisible being, then what's the runner of his sled made out of?" We know," cried the two sisters, but whispering feverishly again, they wondered, "What shall we say? What shall we say?" "No," said the sister, "you have not seen him." And she made them go home. The next day, the rough-faced girl, and now remember, her face was scarred because she was always doing all the work, kind of like Cinderella. And this was her father. The rough-faced girl went to her father and said, "Father, may I please have some beads? May I please have a new buckskin dress and some pretty moccasins? I am going to marry the invisible being. For wherever I look, I see his face." But her father said, "Daughter, I'm sorry. I have no beads left for you, only some little broken shells. I have no buckskin dress. I only have my moccasins that are old and worn." And she said, "Thank you, Father. I will do the best that I can." And so she found some dried reeds, and she took the little broken shells and she strung a necklace, and she stripped birch bark from the dead trees and made a cap, a dress, and leggings. Then with a sharp piece of bone, she carved in the bark pictures of the sun, moon, stars, plants, trees, and animals. She went down to the lake and she soaked the moccasins in water, and then they grew soft, and she molded them to fit her feet. They were still too big and they went flap, flap, flap. And all the people saw her and they came out of their wigwams. And they laughed. And they stared at her. And they said, "Look at that ugly girl! Look at her strange clothes! Hey, hey, hey! Go home, you ugly girl! You'll never marry the invisible being." But the rough-faced girl had faith in herself. And she had courage. She didn't turn back. She just kept walking straight through the village. As she walked on, the great beauty of the earth and the sky spread before her. And truly, she alone, of all in the village, saw in these things the sweet yet awesome face of the invisible being. Can you see the face? What is the rainbow? There's his lips and his eyes. At last, she came to the lake shore, and the sister of the invisible being met her. And she was a very wise woman. And when she looked at you, she didn't just see your face or your hair or your clothes. No, when she looked at you, she would look you right in the eyes, and she could see all the way down to your heart. And she could tell if you had a good, kind heart or a cold, hard, and cruel heart. And when she looked at the rough-faced girl, she saw at once that though her skin was scarred, her hair burnt, her clothes strange, she had a beautiful, kind heart. And so she welcomed her dearly, saying, "Ah, my sister, why have you come?" And the rough-faced girl replied, "I have come to marry the invisible being." "Ah," said the sister, "if you want to marry him, you have to have seen him. Tell me, have you seen my brother, the invisible being?" And the rough-faced girl said, "Yes." "All right then," said the sister, "if you have seen him, tell me what his bow is made out of." And the rough-faced girl said, "His bow? Why, it is the great curve of the rainbow." Oh my goodness, I have a rainbow on my shirt. I really like rainbows. I hope you do too. "Ah," exclaimed the sister in excitement. "Tell me," she says, "if you have seen my brother, the invisible being, what is the runner of his sled made out of?" And the rough-faced girl looked up into the night sky, and she said, "The runner of the sled? Why, it is the spirit road, the Milky Way of stars that spread across the sky." "Ah," cried the sister, in wonder and delight, "you have seen him. Come with me." And taking the rough-faced girl by the hand, she led her back to the great wigwam and sat her in the seat next to the entrance, the wife's seat. Then they heard footsteps coming along the path. Closer and closer, the entrance flap of the wigwam lifted up, and in stepped the invisible being. And when he saw her sitting there, he said, "At last we have been found out." Then, smiling kindly, he added, "And oh, my sister, isn't she beautiful?" And the sister said, "Yes." And the sister of the invisible being then gave the rough-faced girl the finest of buckskin robes, and a necklace of perfect shells. "Now go bathe in the lake," she said, "and dress in these." So the rough-faced girl bathed in the waters of the lake. Suddenly all the scars vanished from her body. Her skin grew smooth again, and her beautiful black hair grew in long and glossy as a raven's wing. Now anyone could see that she was indeed beautiful. But the invisible being and his sister had seen that from the start. Then at last, the rough-faced girl and the invisible being were married, and they lived together in great gladness and were never parted. I love that story. That is such a good story. I hope you're having a good winter. I wanted to read you some books about snow, but we have no snow here. So, as soon as we get some snow, I will read you my favorite snow books. Maybe I'll just tell you about them real quick. This one is called The Snowman. And this is a story that has no words, just pictures. The author of this story is Raymond Briggs. He lived a while ago. And he made all of these beautiful paintings and put them together kind of like a movie. And so this is one of my favorite stories because what happens in this story is the little boy has a snowman friend that he makes outside, and the snowman comes to life. And he and the snowman do all kinds of activities. Wouldn't that be fun to have your own snowman? I would love that. And one thing that they do is they dress him in his dad's clothes. And then they play games and they eat dinner. And then they go outside. Can you see that? Sorry, the light's weird. And they go and they fly all around the town, looking down at the small village. That would be so fun. You can see how beautiful the city is. This snowman is a very special snowman. And they even go to the end of the pier and watch the ice skating. But then it's time for the snowman to say goodbye. And so he gives the boy a hug and he takes him back to his window and the boy falls to sleep. And the next morning, what does the boy do? He wakes up and he runs outside. What do you think he's going to do? He goes to check and see if the snowman is still there. And what does he find? The snowman melted. And that happens to our snowman sometimes, but that's a favorite book. And this is also a movie. So you might want to look that up on YouTube if you get on YouTube. But it has beautiful music, and it's the same pictures that Raymond Briggs made. So check that one out. Okay, my other book is called Snow. So I'll save these ones until we get a snowstorm, and maybe we can read those with snow outside. I hope you're doing well. I miss you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.